Welcome back to Sunrise. Today we're keeping a focus on that subject of restructuring. We've got Mr. George, a.k.a. a legal practitioner. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you so much.
Well, we've had the National Assembly speaking upon this matter. They were apparently keeping tabs while they were on recess. But particularly the House of Reps, they did say they've set up a committee to look into this. But if we cast our minds just shortly before they went on that break, how they voted on devolution of power. If we could just take a look at that. Let's start with that of the Senate. The Senate, yes, indeed, they went ahead. They needed, well, this is how it is. 46 senators voted in support. 48 of them voted against it, and they fell short of that 74 votes required to pass. And they flipped to that of the House of Reps. They had 210. Some say they did a little better against 71 votes. So they fell short of that 240 vote threshold which was required. But now that they've said that they're going to go ahead, revisit this bill, are you optimistic that this indeed will reflect the pulse of the nation?
Well, first and foremost, I need to commend the National Assembly for taking these steps. Any step taken that will help douse the current tension, is quite commendable. But don't forget that even though we are commending them for speaking in this manner, because it does appear that everybody appears to be seeing that there is a need for restructuring. Don't forget that they were part of the people who, as a matter of fact, escalated it, in the sense that when the bill for devolution of power came to the National Assembly, it was shut down. In short, it couldn't even fly.
Did you hear their reason?
It was,
they lumped up so many things into it, so people just felt, no. They prefer everything stands and falls on its own merit.
Well, that can be a rationalization, but you see, what we are now saying is that the current crisis in the country, if you may allow me to put it that way, has gotten everybody to now realize that we need restructuring, such that even this reason of either lumping it together or whatever, because if, for instance, it's happened now, they will find a way of extricating that particular bill and giving it attention, because the nation needs it. But let's go beyond that. You see, that rejection itself, threw the country into a state of hopelessness and helplessness. A number of people who felt that the National Assembly should show leadership by either deliberating on it or at least allowing it to get to the first reading or the second reading, rather. We are in democracy. That's the whole idea, is to continue to judge or continue to discuss and all of that. They didn't even allow a discussion on it. Whether it was lumped together or whatever is irrelevant. But the important thing is that the effect is that it threw the country into a state of helplessness and hopelessness. But I disagree with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who said that he had found out that all the agitation that appeared to be going around or going on in the country, all point to, legislative issues. No, they are not legislative issues. They go beyond legislative issues. Legislative issues may well be part of them. But you see, restructuring has to do with political restructuring, legislative restructuring, economic restructuring, because you see, when you restructure, you have to empower those states, assuming they were talking about regions and all of that. There must be parts of the Constitution that will now, empower them. Whether it has to do with revenue allocation, whether it has to do with resource control, whether it has to do, so that those people who are taking more responsibilities, because everything, don't mind people who tell you that they don't understand what this restructuring is, that, almost everybody says his own idea of restructuring. The whole thing, so maybe it has to be written in vernacular for them to understand it.
Are you saying
that the whole thing about restructuring is that people want a situation where power will be devolved from the center, and they can now do that. It can come in self-determination, it can come in reconfiguration, it can come in restructuring, it can come all manners of names, but it comes to the same thing, and it's as simplistic as people saying, let us be able to determine our own business wherever we are.
Does that then mean that the speaker is wrong if he says that it's impossible for restructuring to be achieved outside the National Assembly?
Yeah, he's particularly wrong. He's so wrong.
How?
I'll tell you why. You see, the National Assembly appears to be appropriating too much responsibilities to themselves. The Constitution, the one I know about, allows the National Assembly to do 3 major functions, and indeed 3 functions. 1, make laws, represent their people, and do oversight function. But you see, the National Assembly has all the while tried to see if they can encroach into all manners of duties, one of which is that they have had a running battle with the executive. At times, they even get to the extent of even determining who should take what position in the executive. You remember the Arumote of Nigeria Stock Exchange or whatever, where they had to tell the executive to sack the person. A personnel issue. National Assembly was determining who could possibly be sacked and who could.
But that's a different matter when it compared to this one.
No, I'm coming to it. The National Assembly has also gone to the extent of even doing interpreting the laws at particular points in time. You remember the controversy about Section 81 of the Constitution with regard to the budget. Because the National Assembly saw a word called estimate. They now said that the duty of the executive is to bring estimate to them, in which case, once the estimate is brought to them, they can now begin to, by the time they finish with the budget, the owner of the budget, which the executive, can hardly recognize that budget. That is the ruling today, as that's the law today, is that bring the what do you call it now, the budget to us. We can stuff our constituency project, do all manners of things, either remove or put or whatever, and we'll give it back to you because the Constitution says what you are supposed to give us is estimate. That is the law today. There is not the court that says so, but that is the law as it stands today. But now, the National Assembly is now, they have moved that their vehicle now to the people of Nigeria, in which case it's like, we are going to give you people a constitution. The National Assembly is a creation of the Constitution.
Are they not?
The National Assembly cannot create the Constitution.
They can they alter it? Which is what they say they're doing.
That is what they can do.
That's what the speaker says they're doing.
Given section 9. But what the Nigerian people want is not an alteration of the Constitution. The Nigerian people say, we want a completely new Constitution because that this one is not working. So what we end up doing with having the National Assembly do is panabuting what already exists. And we have said we have tried it. We have panabuted this Constitution as much as we can. And we cannot get what we want. It is not working. So the Nigerian people are now saying, we need to do a Constitution for ourselves.
So what should the National Assembly now do, seeing that the Constitution does not foresee, has no room for a referendum? There's nothing in the Constitution for a referendum. So what should the National Assembly now do?
You see, one of the things the National Assembly can do to help the country is let them make a law where we Nigerians can, on their own, conduct a political conference that can generate a constitution. You know, we ran into trouble in the 2014, confab, where people said it didn't have a force of law.
And they were right.
And we're now trying to see, can we now, after we finish, the conference, give it to the National Assembly to give it a force of law? Because it is not anywhere in the Constitution. But it's for a purpose. But if the National Assembly can be patriotic enough, altruistic enough to provide give us a provision of the Constitution that can empower any president, it may not be this president or anybody, or any president that we may have, to now convoke a National Assembly that will have the force of law. I mean, they will have a national confab that will have a force of law, in which case we can generate our Constitution from there. The Nigerian people, what they are clamoring for is that let us come together and be able to give ourselves a Constitution. And in so doing, we can now look at these structures. Structures mean things that are holding us together. That is why when people talk about restructuring, they are saying those things. If in engineering, they call them load-bearing, structures, as it were. Those are the things that hold us together. That the way it is constituted now, the National Assembly is politically incapable,
Mr. K,
and constitutionally incapable of giving the Nigerians a just and legitimate constitution.